All right. So before we get into the podcast, I just want to drop on 2 quick ads and pay the bills. My name is Chio Dogu. I run a digital marketing agency based right here in the GTA. We do everything from helping clients launch podcasts, getting entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and speakers booked on podcasts as celebrity guests, creating lead generation campaigns for local businesses using Facebook ads, Instagram ads, LinkedIn ads, and YouTube ads. We also create landing pages and online funnels to help local businesses, entrepreneurs, and big businesses turn clicks into customers. If you're struggling to generate leads and grow your business, hit me up at info@odogwu.com, or you can get on my website at www.odogwu.com. That's www.odogwu.com. I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you're thinking. And with that said, let's get on with the show. Hey guys, welcome to another exciting episode of the GTA Business Titans podcast. My guest today is Mark Evans. Mark is a marketing consultant who helps entrepreneurs with strategy, storytelling, awareness, and engagement. He basically helps B2B companies tell better stories so that they can attract the right leads for their companies. Mark started out his career in the journalism space and then eventually transitioned over to becoming a full-time marketer in content marketing. And then after he worked for a couple of years, he got the entrepreneurial itch to decided that he wanted to go out on his own. So for the past few years, and I don't want to date Mark, but since 2008, Mark has been an independent consultant. He runs Mark Evans Consulting, where he basically helps technology companies generate high quality leads for their business. I'm pleased to have him on the show today to come tell us a little bit about himself, his business, his background, and to teach us a little something about how we can implement storytelling to grow our businesses. In addition to everything else Mark has done, he's also the author of the book titled Storytelling for Startups. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Great. So, Mark, I gave the listeners a quick rundown of your bio, but tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started on your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, the truth of the matter is I lost my job in 2008.
You were a victim of the recession too.
I was. People forget about that. But so I was working for a travel startup that at the beginning of the year was hoping to raise $10 million. And by the end of the year, they merged with another portfolio company. And they laid some people off, and I didn't have a job, and I was wondering what I was going to do. And I went onto Facebook and said, hey, everyone, I've lost my job. And I got approached to do a marketing strategy. And at the time, I'd never done a marketing strategy. But thanks to Google, I figured it out and had a fairly happy client. And that was the beginning of my consulting career.
Wow. So basically, you got your first client just by making a post on Facebook.
Yeah, that was basically it. I mean, to be honest with you, I went onto Google and said, how do you create a marketing strategy? And at the beginning, to be honest, I kind of made it up as I went. You know, the old fake it until you make it adage. And you know, I wouldn't want to tell my early clients that, but I learned from doing stuff for them. And if I look back at my work, it probably wasn't very good. But you know, it was a start of a new career, and sometimes you need to do what you need to do. And and the best experience you can get, the best way to learn is actually just doing things.
Yes, exactly. But before you got started marketing consulting, I mentioned that you were a tech reporter. So let's go back a little bit to those days. And you worked for Bloomberg. You reported for tech. About tech companies in the Toronto area. So what were some of the lessons you learned as a technology reporter in your early career before we now get into your current career as a marketing consultant?
So the biggest lesson I learned in writing for the Globe and Mail, the National Post, and Bloomberg was the value of storytelling. So I would talk to these entrepreneurs and I would ask them what they did, and they would explain their product to me. And then I would say to them, okay, listen, I really didn't understand anything you said there, even though I knew technology. Can you explain it to me in English? So I would force them to explain what they did and why it mattered in very simple terms. And once they did that, their company was much more, it was easier to understand what they were doing. And it dawned on me that business people, by and large, are very bad storytellers. And storytelling is extremely important if you're going to reach a broad audience. If you want people to be interested in what you do and why it matters to them, And so I would say that that was the sort of the key lesson of technology writing, is that try to make technology accessible to everybody.
Okay. Okay. I love that. I love that. And then with those lessons, you gain the insight that, you know what, it's essential for companies to tell better stories in order for them to start generating leads, because when people hear stories, everybody can relate to stories. I think it's why Hollywood does as well as it does, because no matter where you are, I come from Lagos, Nigeria. Everybody knows people like The Rock and Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Stories are relatable across cultures and across times. Is that
Right.
is that a correct assumption in your?
It is a correct assumption, and I do fundamentally believe in the power of storytelling, and people do understand that storytelling matters, and we all like stories. One of the challenges that I run into when talking to entrepreneurs is actually getting them to commit themselves to storytelling, to make an investment in storytelling, because it's easy when you're running a business to do things that solve your problems right away. I don't have enough customers, so I'm going to do some advertising, or I'm going to hire a salesperson. So they tend to think very short term.
Yes.
Whereas storytelling is you're trying to create an aura around your brand. Mm-hmm. You're trying to create this perception that you're different than the competition.
Yeah.
And it's a great exercise, and I think it delivers a lot of ROI, but it takes some courage for an entrepreneur to go, okay, you know, I'm going to do that. I'm going to commit myself to better storytelling, because there's other priorities that seem to be more urgent.
Yeah. But I think another reason why entrepreneurs are hesitant to implement stories in the growth of their business as well as in their marketing is because a lot of people feel, you know, they're not Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, you know, that they're not doing something that is earth-shaking for them to say, hey, you know what, I need to tell a great story to showcase my business. It could just be as simple as, you know what, I run a Shopify store selling baby products, you know, what's the story there? I think that's one of the reasons why people are hesitant to want to put stories as the driving force of their businesses.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I do think that everybody has a story to tell.
Yes, true.
And everyone is a storyteller. We all tell stories throughout the day to our friends and our colleagues and prospects. And if you look at anyone, there's something interesting about them and their background. There's something interesting about their business. And part of the challenge is that a lot of people have a hard time deciphering those stories or discovering those stories, where someone like me who's been trained as a storyteller, I look at them and I'll talk to them and go, well, here's your story right here. It's so easy. It's right in front of you. Mm-hmm. And some of us have, you know, a knack for certain things. Some of us are good at coding, or they're good at sales, and storytelling just seems to be my thing. But I do believe everybody has a good story, and your stories don't have to be necessarily like dramatic stories, okay, or you don't have to be a Steve Jobs. You just have to have something, a little bit of a twist that gets somebody interested in what you're doing.
Okay. All right. So let's take this on a more granular level. You work with a lot of companies. You've worked with over 100 companies implementing storytelling to drive their marketing and their business. So give us a case study of one company that you worked with who were hesitant to implement storytelling, and then after you coached them and you directed them and you taught them what to do, they used it and they saw amazing results in their business.
So there was a company called Da Vinci Retail, and what they do is they allow retailers to put the right products in the right stores in the right quantity. So it's a very much of a spreadsheet kind of assortment business. Mm-hmm. And they had a story that wasn't resonating, that their customers just didn't get what they did. Okay. And we created a very simple story, and the story was around create the greatest assortments ever. And that's a very simple story. And for that target audience, it resonates. And so what we did is we implemented that story. And then the key is that you pollinate that story into different places. So we put it on the website, and they went to a major trade show in New York with the new story and some new sort of marketing collateral. They attracted a lot of attention because people suddenly understood what they did and why it mattered. And I think that's the key for storytelling is just fundamentals. What do you do? Who do you serve, and why does it matter? Okay. And if you can tell a story using those pillars, then you're gonna you're going to grab people's attention. It's going to be something that make them want to say, that sounds interesting. Tell me more. How do you do that? And then you're allowed to tell a bigger and more in-depth story, but you got to hook them somehow, right? You got to, like, the best conversations start with sort of just a small conversation, and then away you go.
Okay. So how does one create that hook, for example?
So there's a couple of ways to look at it. One is sort of the inside out method, which is you go and talk to the key stakeholders within the company. You say, what's interesting about it? What's different about you? Like, tell me about your background. Tell me about why you developed your product. Tell me about some interesting twists along the way. And then you take an outside in view and you talk to your customers and you ask them, so what's interesting about this product or this brand or this company? Tell me about an experience that you've had in terms of how it's changed how you've done business or how it's changed how you run your life. And they'll tell stories on your behalf, or they'll create stories on your behalf, or give you ideas. And so one of the keys to storytelling is to really take a holistic view when it comes to idea generation. Is you can't, as an entrepreneur, come up with all the stories yourself because you operate in a silo, and you have very little perspective about how people see your product or how they see you. So you really need a 360-degree view of the world, and that'll help you create stories or identify the stories that could resonate.
Okay, awesome. So when you wrote the book, Storytelling for Startups, what was the main goal you wanted the book to accomplish?
So I recognized that people knew that storytelling was important, but one of the challenges they had was how to sort of implement it into different marketing channels. So the first part of the book is about the importance of storytelling and who gets to tell your stories. The back part, which people found very useful, is how do you tell stories on a blog? How do you tell stories on a website? How do you tell stories on an ebook? How do you tell stories in a podcast? So it was sort of bridging the gap between the idea and the reality. And I'm actually in the process of actually doing a rewrite of the book. It's going to come out in the fall. I've retitled it Marketing Spark. And it's going to talk more about the strategy of storytelling, but still emphasize be very prescriptive in terms of here's how you do it. And I think that's one of the big challenges for entrepreneurs and probably your audience is, how do I implement storytelling? And my thesis is it's not that hard. You just have to focus on the fundamentals and use the right tools and the right templates, and you'll be able to tell really good stories.
Okay, so the book is broken down into 5 parts. And, without diving too much into the book, I want people to actually go get the book and read it. Let's pull out 1 or 2 lessons in here. So I think one of the first things I liked about the introductory part of the book was that, you broke down the different types of storytellers, and you said, not everybody is going to be the Steve Jobs type of storyteller. There are different types of storytellers. So could you tell us a little bit more about those different kinds of storytellers, and then why you think human beings or entrepreneurs fall into one category or another?
So there are people who are front and center storytellers, and those are the people who like to go on stage. There's people who are influencers, and they're more like the recommenders, the people who sort of are in the know, and they're happy to share their insight with other people. There are storytellers who work behind the scenes. You could have your employees are good storytellers. There are storytellers that you hire, people who do public relations, and there's storytellers in the media. So you're trying to get different types of people to tell your story. You can't be the sole source of your storytelling, because after a while, people may stop listening to you. They may not find you as interesting because they've heard your story. But if other people tell your story, then it takes on a different flavor, or they have different angles. So one of the things to think about as an entrepreneur is, how do you get other people around you to tell your story? And it's just a matter of identifying those storytellers and then doing some research and being able to figure out, so who are the people who would find my story the most interesting, and then really focus on building relationships with those people so they'll tell your story for you.
And sometimes that means the entrepreneur is not necessarily the best person to tell the story, correct?
Absolutely. Like, there are some entrepreneurs who are very charismatic and have big personalities, and they love the stage, they love the spotlight, and they're great storytellers. And there's some entrepreneurs who are terrible storytellers. but they may have interesting stories to tell. So how do you do that? Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be them. It could be a PR agency that reaches out to the media. It could be their social media person, or it could be a community manager who's going to deliver the story on their behalf. So, I think entrepreneurs recognize their strengths and weaknesses, and if it is a weakness, then you've got to look at other alternatives and have people do it for you, which is perfectly fine.
Awesome. So, one of the things in your bio that I did not mention is that you have one of the hottest email newsletters. You have thousands of subscribers, and it's a highly anticipated newsletter. So, tell us a little bit more about driving customer engagement using mediums like a newsletter, a blog, or even a podcast, for example. Because I know right now a lot of business owners listening to this are saying, okay, that's great for tech companies, but I am a dentist or I'm an accountant. How can I represent the same storytelling techniques in my business, knowing fully well that I am not in the hot tech/startup scene?
Right. So I think every business can tell stories, and a lot of it has to do with your target audiences and how they consume stories. So if you have a podcast, for example, but your audience doesn't listen to podcasts, well, then you're probably wasting your time. If I write blog posts, but my people don't read blog posts, then I'm probably wasting my time. So a lot of it has to do with is where is your audience and how do they consume stories? What are the mediums that they use? So for me, in my industry, newsletters are very popular, and my newsletter it comes out weekly every Saturday morning, and it features curated content. So I scour the web for content that I think is interesting about marketing and sales and growth, and then I package it all up and send it out to about 2,000 people a week. And I don't promote myself in the newsletter. It's a very much of a soft sell. If I'm providing this value to my readers, then they'll think of who is this Mark Evans and why, and they'll check me out, and maybe my message will resonate with them. For you, it's a way of using a podcast to differentiate yourself, to build an audience, using your personality and your enthusiasm. And for a dentist, the storytelling might be maybe approaching the sort of local newspaper and then writing a guest column on dental hygiene, or it could be filming a video and going on to LinkedIn about the best way to brush your teeth. That you got to figure out like where your audience is and maybe different things are doing. It could be video, it could be writing. I mean, it could even be photographs. I mean, you could even tell stories on Instagram using really good photographs. So, I mean, let's say, for example, you run a flower store. Like, how do I tell a story running a flower store? Well, Instagram would be a great way to show flowers and your arrangements and your happy customers. So storytelling happens in lots of different ways.
So basically, a business owner just has to be strategic and look at their business and figure out where exactly the customers are. And if you already have customers, your customers will most likely tell you if you have a conversation with them and say, hey, you know what, I'm trying to figure out how to best reach people like you that are my best customers. Do you read books? Do you listen to podcasts? What exactly do you consume when you're not here with me? And they'll tell you, correct?
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the keys to marketing. And one of the things we should talk about is the value of talking to your customers. By and large, I think most businesses do a terrible job of talking to customers because we all take them for granted. They're a customer. They buy our products. So why would we need to talk to them or market to them?
Yes.
But one of the keys to success, I believe, is knowing your customers inside out, showing that you value your business and using them to drive your sales and marketing, using them to collect ideas or to get insight about what they're thinking. What do they think about your products? Are they looking at other products? What do they see out there? So one of the big takeaways from today's conversation should be talk to your customers. If you're not talking to them right now, you better start doing it. And if you're already talking to them, talk to them some more, right?
Yeah.
Because they are a treasure trove of information.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that, your first gig had to do with you creating a marketing strategy plan for a client. So tell us a little bit more as we start to wind down and transition towards the next phase of the show about how to best create a marketing plan for a particular business.
So it really is sort of an 8-step process, and the steps are really all about, the first step is really sort of getting a sense of your business. And, what do you do? How is it different? Who's the competition? Then you want to look at your goals, because every marketing strategy needs to have, like, what do you want to accomplish? At the end of the day, what is the thing that you need to do? Or what does marketing need to do for you? You want to look at your target audiences, so the people that matter to you, and do some customer discovery, and including cognitive customers. You want to be able to tell a good story, so to position your product in a different way, so develop some value propositions. Then you want to decide on the channel. So going back to our conversation about partying, where the party's happening. So focus on marketing where your audiences are. Tactical execution. So we've decided on the channels we're going to use. So how do we tactically execute? And then the final piece is measurement and optimization. So how well is our marketing doing? Like, what are the metrics we're going to use to determine whether marketing is performing, or whether we need to change things up? So if things aren't working as well as you want, then you optimize them so they work better, or you change directions. You try different things. Things that maybe you thought, well, we can put it off till later. Maybe the things that will work for you in the first part. But it's a multi-step process. I just finished writing an ebook about how to create a marketing strategy, which I'll share with your audience. Yeah. They can download it off my website, and it really does. It really is a user-friendly document that shows you exactly the steps to take when you want to create a marketing strategy.
Awesome stuff, and I'll be sure to put a link to that once we get the document. So as we start to wind down the show, the next segment of the show has to deal with you personally, in terms of building your business as a consultant. So could you talk about when you struggled as an entrepreneur growing your business, and how you overcame a particular challenge?
Well, one of the toughest parts about starting a business is actually starting a business. So when you decide to get going, the first year is probably the most challenging, because you don't have a track record, you don't have any customers. You're still trying to figure out what is that product that you're going to sell. So my first year was, a matter of I drank a lot of coffee. I met with a lot of people. I tried to get a better handle on what people were what they're interested in buying. And then eventually I came up with a product they wanted to buy. But the reality of entrepreneurship is that the market is always changing on you. So what they may want for a while changes because of competition or new technologies or new services. And then you have to, at some point in time, you have to read what's going on. Maybe your bank account will tell the story for you. And then you have to figure out, well, how do I change things? How do I pivot? And that's when you go back to your customers. And you say, listen, I just want to get together with you, and you learn about what they're looking for. So this is a process actually I'm going through right now as I look to reposition my business a little bit. One of the things I realized, I spent a lot of time focused on storytelling. I realized that although I think it's valuable for a lot of companies, it's not a pain for them. It's not a big enough problem. Looking for is marketing direction. So I'm spending a lot of time focusing on developing marketing strategies, because I think that businesses have two big issues when it comes to marketing. One is they don't know what to do, and they don't know how to do it.
Yes. So
what I'm going to do is say, hey, listen, I'll help you figure out what to do, and then I'll work with you to actually get it done. And I think as entrepreneurs, if I can solve that problem for entrepreneurs, that's going to be huge. And I think that those are big problems that entrepreneurs are experiencing right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. What to do and how to do it. That's pretty awesome. So the next question I have for you, in terms of, so you've worked with over 100 clients now, so you're pretty much well established and well known in your industry. But for somebody starting out as a consultant, independent consultant, whether it's financial, whether it's accounting, whether it's marketing, what are some of the best ways for somebody listening to this show and thinking, oh man, I love what Mark is saying, but you know what? I need to build my book of business as an independent consultant myself. So what are some of the best ways to do that in the GTA?
So I would say number one is be very clear about what you do and the value that you deliver. So when my kids were growing up, they had these books about fairies, and every fairy had a particular talent. So one fairy could dance really well, one could sing. And so what I realized is that as consultants, we just can't be generalists. We can't say, well, I do marketing, because that's not good enough, because people don't know what kind of marketing you do. So you have to say, well, I do storytelling, or I do strategy, or I do customer discovery. So as a consultant, you got to figure out what your talent is, what you're really, really good at. And then you have to, when people ask you, what do? I go, I do this for these type of customers. That's number one. And then second, you have to figure out how to spread the word. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. And I still think that personal networking is probably the most powerful. Is you go to industry events, you go to small events, you go to big events, you meet as many people as possible. You reach out to people in your industry and see if you can invite them for coffee. I think that's really good. Connecting on LinkedIn, I think, is a very powerful thing. Even when you're connecting with someone you don't know, if you have relevant skills, if you have skills that they might be interested in, then I think there's opportunities to connect with people. Once you've got that initial connection, then you can build on it. You can send them value-added information, or you can try to get together with them. The whole idea, I think, is you've really got to take your story and tell it wherever you can. So tell it where your audience is. Some of it's going to be physical, people that are in your industry. Some it's going to be on the internet, but really figure out the best channels to tell your story, and then go. It's like, it's online, it's offline, but the biggest thing is just sort of spread the word so people know what you do, and they can figure out from there whether you can offer value to them.
Okay. Awesome. So now we're transitioning over into the last third of the podcast, and this has to deal with resources that have helped you grow your business. So can you talk a little bit about some of the resources you've used in the GTA to help you grow your business? Right.
So I would say that when I was starting, there was a lot of really good information at Mars, the Mars Discovery District. So for entrepreneurs, right now, they used to do these events, but they've transitioned to them being online. So there's a ton of information on the Mars website. There's video courses that you can take. There's all kinds of templates that you can look at. As far as sort of meeting people, there's an organization called Tech TO. They've got something called Marketing TO and Sales TO and Travel TO and Health TO. And so, I find these industry events to be really useful. And there's a ton of great content out there. Like, I subscribe to a bunch of newsletters. Some of them, very technology related, some around branding, but and there's great podcasts out there. So I think, if you're looking for information, there's no lack of really great information out there. You just have to focus on what you're interested in, and there's amazing learnings. Like, there's just people who are way smarter than me, that they just deliver these great nuggets of information. I think, the biggest thing you can continue to do as an entrepreneur, or the best thing you can do, is continue to learn, because, your business keeps evolving, and there's always people who are going to tell you things you don't know. And so just have a hunger for learning and educating yourself.
Cool. And then in terms of, relaxing, unwinding, and enjoying yourself, what are some of your best restaurants, bars, pubs, clubs, maybe even a nice beach that you go to hang out and relax?
So I'm big into sports. I play a lot of hockey and a lot of tennis. And I think for entrepreneurs, physical exercise is really important, because we tend to be, it's a high stress environment in which we operate in. There's there's ups and downs. And so you need an outlet, whether you're into music or whether you're into into health. And so that's what I do a lot of. There's some great restaurants in Toronto. There's one called DeSoto's on St. Clair, near where I live. I love Korean food on Bloor Street. Mexican food. So, I live near Bloor, and and like anywhere in Toronto, there's great food to eat. So it's combination. I exercise because I like to eat, but I think what you need to do is you need to sort of find something that you can get you away from the business world. It gives you an opportunity to enjoy your family and to give yourself a break, because I think we're so wired right now that we need to refuel, right, and re-energize. So, whatever you can do to do that, it's take the time off and then get right back at it, because being an entrepreneur, it's a 7/24 kind of thing, but you can't all the time.
True. And with that said, Mark, we've reached the end of the show. It's really been a pleasure having you come share your words of wisdom. But before I let you go, where can people find you, reach out to you, and learn more about you and your business?
So my website is markevans.ca. So it's markevans.ca. And you can subscribe to my newsletter. There's an ebook, a link that I'll share with you. And I write a blog on a probably once a week basis. So there's lots of resources there, lots of information. And you can check out the services page to learn how I can help businesses and help entrepreneurs.
Awesome. And I'll put a link to everything you've mentioned in the show notes when this episode is edited and ready to go live. So, Mark, thanks a lot for coming to share your story and your words of wisdom. I've truly enjoyed the conversation today.
Thank you for having me.
That's it, people. Another fantastic episode of the GTA Business Titans podcast. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast today and got some great info out of it, don't be stingy. Share with a friend and leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. Also, if you need any help with your online marketing needs, feel free to reach out to me at www.odogwu.com. That's www.odogwu.com. Or you can email me on info at odogwu.com. Or you just hit me up on this GTA Business Titles podcast website and I'll be sure to respond to you. We help local businesses get more leads and sales from the internet using tools like Facebook advertising, Instagram ads, landing pages, website creation, online funnels, and so much more. So if you want to turn clicks into customers, there's only one name to call in the GTA, and that's Chiodogwu at www.odogwu.com. Till next time, guys. Be a titan, be great, make something great happen in your life today. Bye.